If you think August is too late to plant vegetables, you may be giving up right before the best part of the garden begins. The spring crops are gone, the tomatoes may be slowing down, and the heat can make everything feel tired. But August is not the end of the growing season. For a lot of vegetables, it is the start of a better one. Today on Let Dusty Explains, we are going straight into 10 vegetables you can plant in August for a real fall harvest. I am putting the fast and easy crops first, because if you want momentum in the garden, you should start with something that rewards you quickly. These are not complicated crops, and you do not need a perfect garden setup. You just need warm soil, steady moisture, and the right timing before cooler nights arrive. Number 1 is radishes. If you want the quickest win in an August garden, start here. Radishes germinate fast in warm soil, often in just a few days, and many varieties are ready to harvest in about 3 to 4 weeks. That means seeds planted in August can be on your table before September is over. The reason fall radishes can be better than spring radishes is simple. They start fast in warm soil, then mature as the weather begins to cool. That gives you a crisp root with a cleaner, milder bite, instead of the hot, woody radishes people often get when spring suddenly turns too warm. The main rule with radishes is to harvest on time. Do not let them sit in the ground just because the leaves still look healthy. A radish can go from crisp to tough very quickly once it passes its harvest window. Plant a short row, mark the date, and pull them when the packet says they are ready. If you want a steady supply, sow a small patch every 10 days for a few rounds. That is much better than planting one huge row and ending up with too many radishes at once. Number 2 is arugula. This is one of the fastest greens you can plant in August, and it is perfect if you like salads, sandwiches, pizza toppings, or quick kitchen greens. Many arugula varieties can be harvested young in about 3 to 4 weeks. The secret is not letting the leaves get too big. Small arugula leaves are tender, nutty, and lightly peppery. Large leaves can become sharp, bitter, and overpowering, especially if the weather is still hot. For August, planting give arugula consistent moisture, and harvest it young. Use scissors, and cut the leaves about an inch above the soil instead of pulling the whole plant. That way, new growth can come back for another cutting. If you plant a small patch now, and another one 2 weeks later, you can stretch your harvest into the cooler part of fall. Arugula is one of those crops that makes you feel like the garden is working again almost immediately. And that is why I like putting it near the front of this list. Number 3 is mustard greens. If you want something fast, bold, and useful in the kitchen, mustard greens deserve a spot in your August garden. They can be ready for baby leaf harvest in about a month, and they bring a peppery flavor that becomes much more balanced as temperatures cool. In hot weather, mustard greens can taste aggressive. But when they grow into September and October, that sharp edge softens and the leaves become richer, sweeter, and easier to use. The best approach is to plant mustard greens in the second half of August if your climate is still very hot. Give them a little afternoon shade if possible, and keep the soil evenly moist until they are established. Harvest young leaves for salads or let them grow bigger for cooking. They are excellent sautéed with garlic added to soups, or cooked the classic Southern way. Just remember, younger leaves are milder, older leaves are stronger. If you want the best flavor, do not wait until the plant is huge. Number 4 is lettuce. A lot of gardeners give up on lettuce after summer because it bolts, turns bitter, or refuses to germinate in hot soil. But August gives you a second chance, especially if you understand one important detail. Lettuce seed does not love heat. When the soil is too warm, germination can be poor. So the trick is to keep the seed zone cool for the first few days. Sow lettuce in a spot with afternoon shade, or use a light cloth over the seeded area to protect the soil surface from direct sun. Water the bed before planting, then keep it lightly moist until the seeds sprout. Once lettuce seedlings are up and growing, they can handle the end of summer much better, especially as nights begin to cool. By the time the leaves are ready to harvest, the weather is usually working with you instead of against you. For fall lettuce, choose varieties labeled heat-tolerant, slow-bolt leaf lettuce romaine, or butterhead. Loose leaf types are especially practical because you can harvest the outer leaves and let the center keep growing. That gives you repeated harvests instead of one single head. If your summer lettuce was bitter and disappointing, August lettuce can remind you why people grow it in the first place. Number 5 is spinach. Spinach is a little trickier than radishes or arugula, but it is absolutely worth planting in August if you time it right. Spinach loves cool weather, and the leaves that grow in fall are usually sweeter, more tender, and better tasting than spinach grown during warm spring weather. The problem is germination. If the soil is too hot, spinach seed may struggle to sprout. That is why for many gardeners, late August is better than early August. Wait until the worst heat begins to ease, especially if your daytime temperatures are still high. You can also pre-moisten the bed plant in partial shade, or start seeds in small trays where you can control moisture more easily. Look for varieties labeled slow bolt or good for fall planting. Bloomsdale types are a classic choice, but the main thing is choosing spinach that can handle changing temperatures. Once spinach is growing, harvest the outer leaves first and leave the center intact. That keeps the plant producing instead of ending the harvest all at once. Number 6 is bok choy. If you want a fall crop that grows fast, tastes better fresh, and feels more useful than ordinary lettuce, bok choy is a strong choice for August. Baby bok choy can be ready in about 30 days, while full-size types usually take around 45 to 60 days. That means an August planting can give you real food in September or October, before the garden fully slows down. The reason bok choy works so well in fall is that it likes the shift from warmth into cooler weather. The warm soil helps it get started, but the cooler nights help the stems stay crisp and the flavor stay mild. If you have only eaten bok choy from the grocery store, growing it yourself can be a surprise. Fresh bok choy has a clean crunch, a gentle sweetness, and tender green leaves that work beautifully in stir-fries, soups, noodles, or even quick sautéed side dishes. The key in August is germination. Bok choy seed does not love hot, dry soil, so give it a little help at the beginning. Sow it where it gets morning sun and afternoon shade, or use a light shade cloth during the hottest part of the day. Keep the soil evenly moist until the seedlings are established. Once they are up and growing, bok choy moves quickly. For a fast harvest, grow baby bok choy and cut the whole plant young. For a larger harvest, give full-size plants more space and let them build those thick white stems. Number 7 is turnips. Turnips are one of the most underrated fall crops because most people think of them only as big old bitter roots. But that is not the turnip you want from an August planting. The best fall turnips are pulled young, around golf ball size, when they are crisp, mild, and slightly sweet. At that stage, they are closer to a radish with a smoother flavor than the tough storage turnips many people remember. Turnips also give you 2 harvests from one planting. The greens can be picked before the roots are ready, usually once the leaves are large enough to use. They cook like mustard greens with a peppery, satisfying flavor that fits perfectly into soup, skillet dishes, and southern-style greens. Then a few weeks later, the roots size up and give you the second harvest. That makes turnips practical for a fall garden because you are not waiting the whole season for one payoff. For August, planting sow turnips directly into the soil. They do not like being transplanted once the root starts forming. Keep the bed moist while the seeds sprout, then thin the seedling so each root has room to swell. This step matters. If turnips are crowded, you will get nice leaves, but small, disappointing roots. Number 8 is beets. Beets are another crop that gives you more than one harvest, and that makes them worth planting in August. Most people focus only on the root, but beet greens are edible long before the beet itself is ready. The leaves have a mild, earthy flavor, almost like a richer spinach, and they are excellent sautéed with garlic, olive oil, or a little butter. The roots take longer, usually around 55 to 70 days, depending on the variety, but August planting puts them in the right window. They grow through late summer, then mature as the weather cools. That cooler finish helps the flavor become sweeter and deeper. A beet pulled in October can taste completely different from one grown through stressful summer heat. The trick with beets is steady moisture and proper thinning. Beet seeds are actually clusters, which means one seed can produce more than one seedling. If you do not thin them, the roots compete and never size up properly. Let the seedlings grow a little, then thin them so each plant has enough room. Harvest the roots when the shoulders are about 2 to 3 inches across. Let them get too large and the texture can become woody. If you want a beet that looks incredible on camera, Chioggia beets have pink and white rings inside, and they make a beautiful visual for a fall harvest video. Number 9 is kale. Kale is not the fastest crop on the list, but it belongs here because fall is when kale becomes the vegetable it was supposed to be. In hot weather, kale can taste strong, tough, and a little too green. But when the weather cools down, especially after a light frost, the plant begins converting stored starches into sugars. That is why fall kale often tastes sweeter and milder than summer kale. This is the crop for gardeners who want the season to keep going after everything else looks tired. Plant kale in August, let it establish through September, and start harvesting outer leaves once the plant is large enough. Do not cut the center growing point. Take the lower outside leaves and leave the middle alone, and the plant can keep producing for weeks. In many areas, kale will handle cold weather better than almost anything else in the garden. For varieties, lacinato kale, also called dinosaur kale, is a strong choice for cooking because the leaves are thick, dark, and rich. Red Russian kale is more tender and often better for quick sautés or young leaf harvests. The main thing is to give kale enough space and steady water while it is young. Once established, it becomes one of the toughest and most forgiving crops in a fall garden. Number 10 is scallions. This may not be the most dramatic vegetable on the list, but it might be the one you use the most. Scallions or green onions are perfect for August because they do not demand much space, they are easy to grow, and they make everyday food better. Eggs, soup salads, noodles, grilled meat, baked potatoes, rice bowls. Almost anything tastes fresher with a handful of chopped scallions on top. Scallions are also great for small gardens, raised beds, and containers. You do not need a full row. A narrow strip along the edge of a bed is enough. Sow the seeds, keep the soil moist until they sprout, and be patient. They are not as instant as radishes, but once they are established, they become very low maintenance. The best trick with scallions is to harvest the tops instead of pulling the whole plant every time. Use scissors and snip the green leaves about an inch above the soil. Leave the base in the ground, keep watering, and new growth can come back. In mild fall weather, you may get multiple cuttings from the same planting. That makes scallions one of the most useful crops for a late-season garden because they keep giving without taking much from you. So there is the full list: radishes, arugula, mustard greens, lettuce, spinach, bok choy, turnips, beets, kale, and scallions. 10 vegetables you can plant in August without waiting until next spring to feel like a gardener again. Some are fast, some are better after cool weather, some give you leaves first and roots later. But all of them prove the same point: August is not wasted time in the garden. The secret is to stop thinking of August as the end of summer and start thinking of it as the beginning of the fall harvest. Warm soil gets seeds moving, cooler nights improve flavor, and shorter days help many leafy crops behave better than they did in June. If you try this, start small. Pick 3 crops from this list instead of planting all 10 at once. Choose one fast crop like radishes or arugula, one leafy crop like spinach or kale. That gives you quick success, steady greens, and something you will actually use in meals. And before you plant, check your first expected frost date. August gardening depends on timing. Gardeners in the south may have a long runway into fall and winter. Gardeners in colder zones may need faster varieties or a little protection when cold nights arrive. A simple row cover can buy you extra time, especially for greens. Thanks for watching Let Dusty Explains. If this helped you see August differently, subscribe to the channel. Around here we take simple home and garden ideas and explain what actually works, why it works, and how to use it without making things complicated. Now tell me in the comments which one are you planting first this August? And if you know your growing zone, add that too, because another gardener reading your comment may be planting in the exact same climate.